With streaming still dominating the music scene and companies announcing they are stopping physical disc production in the near future, you would think the days of physical media are cooked. However, in recent time, I have seen quite a bit of people around my age range who are taking back their ownership of physical media, specifically in music. And to me, that just warms my heart. I am what you would call Gen Z, and I would say I was the last generation to fully grow up with any sort of physical media. And so I have always had this attachment to actually owning something, have it in my hands and say that it's mine. And with more people getting into the hobby, I think it'd be a nice idea to do a whole guide video talking about how to start a music collection in 2026. Now, I know some of my viewers are going to be like, oh, Bryer, we already know all this stuff. We don't need a tutorial of how to start a music collection. And that's true, because this video is not really for you. This is, like I said, meant for people who are interested in getting to the hobby, and this is a good place to start. But if you are new to this channel, my name is Bryer Sisneros, welcome to Bryer's Music Showcase, and I've been collecting music for over 10 years, and I hope you will find this guide useful. Alright, let's just jump right into it. Now, the first thing you want to consider is the exact formats you're going to be focusing on. And when it comes to format, you're really coming down to three options. And I say three because I really don't know how many of you are interested in 8-track. The first format I'm going to talk about is vinyl. Now, vinyl is probably the most popular format of the three I'm going to bring up, and it's easy to see why, because you have the very large artwork, which makes it pretty desirable, and there's some level of sophistication of having a vinyl record in your hands. And not only that, there are some people who will go out and say that vinyl will give you the greatest and most authentic listening experience. However, there are some downsides that you want to consider. And the first one comes down to price. It's probably the most expensive out of the three, whether you buy them used or brand new. Not to say you can't find cheap vinyl, but if you really want the good stuff, you might have to spend a little bit more money. And another thing you must consider is that vinyl takes a bit of maintenance. You do have to clean these regularly, and you do need to store them properly, because if you do not take care of your records properly, then they will deteriorate over time. And on the other hand, we also got CDs. Now, as you can see, CDs are a lot smaller, so if you don't have the greatest eyesight, then be prepared to have a hard time reading the booklets that these come with. But with that said, I think the biggest positive with CDs is that they can be very durable. I've had CDs that actually date back to the 80s and they still sound great. It's similar to vinyl, where you do need to take care of them to an extent, but definitely not as much. Again, if you store these properly and you don't scratch up the back, then again, these can last you a long time. And another great positive with CDs is the fact that they are a little bit cheaper. Obviously, there are some CDs that might be a little bit pricey, but in the used market, you can get a lot of CDs for little money. And that's kind of the reason why I have a lot of CDs, as you see behind me. And a fun thing about CDs is that these are a lot more portable. If you have a portable CD player, or if your car still has their CD players installed, then you can take these on the go. That's just something you cannot do with a vinyl record. And finally, we have cassettes. Now, I will admit I don't have the most experience with cassettes, but they're pretty popular to a certain amount of people. And it's easy to see why. There is a bit of nostalgic appeal to them, especially they have this iconic shape that we've seen in media a lot of times, and these are very popular in the 80s and 90s. Of course, the term mixtape stems from these things, so they definitely have their fans. However, there are some downsides to these, and the fact comes down to, out of all the formats I've talked about, cassettes are notorious for having the weakest sound quality, and that's going to determine how much you're willing to sacrifice sound quality just for the nostalgic aspects of these, but just keep that in mind. And also, the tape will wear out over time on multiple plays. That's the thing on a lot of tapes, so just be careful with these, and also be careful because, again, the tape can wear out if not taken care of properly. So another thing to consider. But the other positive I can say about cassettes is, like CDs, if you still have your cassette player or your Walkman, then cassettes are also portable and they're easy to take on the go. Now, if you couldn't tell, the main format I went with are CDs because of the reasons I mentioned before. They were smaller, so I can fit more on a shelf, and they were a lot more affordable. But with that in mind, it doesn't mean you can only focus on just one. I started with CDs for a while, but then as the time went on, I eventually started getting some more records and even a teensy bit on cassettes, but obviously this is not really my main focus. But again, if you want to experiment with other formats, then you have that option as well. But I would recommend just stick with one for the time being, just to kind of dip your toes into it. And if you're really enjoying the hobby, then that's when you can explore other formats. So now that you've decided on a format, now you need something to actually play it on. So when it comes to buying a player, to me it comes down to three things: functionality, audio quality, and price. Functionality goes without saying. You want something pretty simple, especially if you're starting out. You do not need to fly through a hoop to press play. So it should be easy and comfortable to use. So pretty self-explanatory. But now price and audio quality, they kind of go hand in hand, because it's, as you can probably guess already, that the more pricier it is, the better the audio quality. And the lesser the price, then the lesser the audio quality. And so it's a constant balancing act of all three that's going to determine what player suits right for you. And so that's where you probably need to do your own research. So let me talk about the players that I use. And again, I mainly have records and CDs. I don't have a cassette player, honestly. I know I showed cassettes earlier, but that's because they had Queen on the name. So any case, so we'll talk about the record player first. So this turntable is an Audio-Technica LP60X, and it's a very good starter player, I think. It's easy to use. There's only a few buttons on this, and it's an automatic player because once you hit start, it will start at the beginning, and then once it gets to the end, it will go back to the start. And there's a built-in preamp to this, so you don't need another piece of equipment you need to buy. And I also bought these active speakers from Edifier, and these suit me just fine. It sounds really nice. You still get the experience when it comes to vinyl records. It's just a very solid player. And I know there are some people who start out with those suitcase players, which I'm not going to go into because I know there's a ton of vinyl snobs that talk very negatively on those things. If that's your starter one, then fine. But if you're looking to upgrade, then I would suggest this one, for example. So that's the record player. But now, when it comes to CDs, I've used a lot of CDs players over the years. You know, I've used some that's kind of like your basic CD player in the past, and there is another CD player in my living room, but I don't use that too often since we have family sleeping in the living room, so I can't really go in there. But I knew I want to have a player for this room, and for a while this was my player. This is just a very cheap, very simple CD player. I just got this on Amazon. This was like roughly 30-40 bucks, and you know, it's shaped like a little record player, which I thought was very cute. So this worked fine for a while, but there definitely were some things I wasn't too happy with. So I knew I wanted to upgrade it at one point, and luckily that day came sooner than I expected, because I was able to acquire this player, and I got this player thanks to this video sponsor. This video is brought to you by the people over at Fosse Audio. So recently, I was reached out to the people over at Fosse Audio to review their new Merrick CD player. This is a compact, simple player that not only looks nice, but it's easy to set up and has some neat features. It comes with a manual, a remote control, and a wire to connect to a power source. For me, I just want a simple player where I can just put on my dresser, attach headphones to it, and just sit back and relax. And while I can do that with this, I can also attach my active speakers to it, and I can make the music fill the room while I get work done. And another cool feature is that there is actually a USB port on the back where if you put a flash drive here, you can actually rip the audio from the CD onto the drive, and you can transfer it to your computer. And another really good plus with this player is the gapless listening. The problem with this player is that if you're listening to a live album or a concept album and songs blend into each other, there's going to be a slight pause in between. But with this player, you do not have that issue. I have been using this player for over 2 weeks as of recording this video, and the contrast between the Merrick player and my old player is night and day. Even with headphones, there is a big difference in audio quality. So if you're just getting into the hobby and you want a good CD player to start with, this is one I would recommend. And if you want to purchase this CD player, then there's a link in the description and in the pinned comments. And if you use the code Bryer during checkout, you will get a 15% discount. So thank you Fosse Audio for sponsoring this portion of the video. Let's get right back into the guide. So now that you've settled on a format, there is one more thing you want to think about before you actually go out into the world and start buying. And that is setting a goal. And what I mean by that is simply have an idea on what your collection is going to be. And it comes down to a few questions. Are you going to focus on a certain band or artist? Or are you going to focus on a genre, a certain decade? Or if you're like me, have a little bit of everything. This is a nice little thing to think about because when you go into a store, you kind of already know what you're looking for. So that's going to make purchasing a lot easier and maybe a little quicker if you're in a rush. But you should have some sort of plan every time you go into a store. Okay, so the time has finally come to go out and buy your music. Now, I actually made a video on this a long time ago talking about where I buy CDs, and that video is a bit dated these days, so this is kind of like an update. So to kind of talk about a little bit of my history. Now, I started collecting in places like Walmart and Target back when CDs was still a thing, but in recent time, it is not what it used to be. So I had to quickly go and find other means. And for a while, I used places like Amazon because that was a pretty easy place to go. But very quickly, about a couple years in, I realized just how limiting Amazon can be, especially if you're trying to find more obscure artists or bands. That's when I went to places like eBay, and then there was Discogs, and currently now it's like the app Whatnot, which I've talked about before, where you can get a lot for cheap stuff and a lot of obscure. But finally, I went to record stores, and to me, record stores / music shops are going to be one of the best places to go. Not only are you supporting independent business owners, but you can get a lot. And again, the price is going to vary depending on which store you go to, but in my experiences, especially for CDs, you can get them fairly cheap. And records, you can probably find some cheap stores out there. But you just gotta keep looking around. And another great thing about buying from an actual store is that you get to immediately get to see the actual quality of the product before you buy it. You can take the record out, you can take the CD out, and you can inspect it, just see how good it is. And if it looks good, you can just go ahead, buy it. But if you notice some things you're not impressed with, you can just simply put it back. So it makes buying a lot easier, so that way you don't have to always guess or take a gamble if you're gonna buy from an online seller. But with that said, I will say I have not had any bad experience buying online. Generally, a lot of the CDs come and shipped very well, and they come exactly how they're described. So that's a good note to have. But also, I guess the final downside I can say about buying online is that if you're like me and you're impatient, then waiting is going to be a bit of a challenge. So again, record stores is a great place. And then of course, like I said, eBay or Discogs or whatnot. Those are like some of the best places I've been using in recent time, and I usually come out with a lot of cool stuff. So those are the places that I would recommend. And since we're on the topic of going to a record store and getting first-hand look at the quality of the product, this will be a quick segment, but just know, make sure you have an idea on these. So what you see on the screen is just a bunch of basically a grade. And this is mostly for vinyl specifically. I don't think you're gonna see these on CDs too often, but a lot of the time when I go to a record store, you're gonna see these letters, and this is just telling you the quality of the actual vinyl itself. You have mint at the top, which goes without saying, that's like pretty much brand new, and then you have everything below that, and as you can see, the very bottom is probably the stuff you want to avoid. But to me, VG Plus, that seems like a good range to start, and they're not too expensive there, and you're gonna still get some pretty decent quality, aside from maybe a few pops here and there. But I'd say from that point up, I'd say that's where you want to be looking at. You could take risks and try to buy some cheaper stuff, but if you want some of the best, again, VG up is kind of where you want to look at. But yeah, just want to showcase that. Again, I don't think you'll see these on CDs too much. You can just look at the back, and if it's scratched beyond belief, yeah, don't buy it. And if you're looking for cassettes, then obviously just look at the tape itself. It should be pretty clean. If it's dirty and you see things that might look like mold, yeah, you might want to stay away from that as well. Okay, so you have your music, but now we've come to the area that has scarred collectors since the beginning, and that is storage. Now, the amount of space you have is going to determine how much you can buy, unless you can muster a way to expand it. Either you have to buy more shelves or get a new house. But if you are smart enough, you can probably still work around your limited space. Like my room, for example, is not the biggest room in the house, but I was able to still get a lot despite the limited space. I know I've installed a couple shelves around here, and I've found very lucrative ways of trying to put more on a shelf. But we'll talk more about the CDs in a sec. But in terms of my records, obviously I just do like the most basic thing. Before I still have it, but I have this little bin where I used to put a lot of my records in. But then I was able to empty out this shelf, and so I was able to store CDs, vinyl here. And you know, when it comes to making sure you're storing them properly, of course, for records, make sure they're laying vertically. Make sure you don't lay them flat for long periods of time, as that will cause warping. And also, you also kind of want to invest on getting some of these outer sleeves here, which thankfully a lot of the record stores I go to will have an outer sleeve already, so that's kind of nice. But another thing you want to invest in are these little record sleeves here that you can put on the inside, just so you can protect the artwork itself, because over time, the more you take the record out of the actual sleeve, that will actually cause wear on the tops and cause tearing. So these kind of help get rid of that fear and preserves the actual record sleeve. And also these sleeves are good for just protecting the records from dust and other various things that might get on it. So yeah, invest in stuff like this. But now for the CDs, again, another good plus with CDs is that you can store them in a lot of ways. You know, I have them vertical like this, or horizontal I should say, and I've even stored a lot vertically. And again, I have not heard anybody say anything about it. You know, I have stacked CDs like this for a long time, and even I've stacked them high before, and the disc never gets damaged. It all comes out nicely. So, and again, because of this, I can put a lot more on the shelf, and helps in the long run, as much as I can. And I also have drawers with CDs in them, and you know, the drawers are starting to get a little full, but I still have more options if I really need to. One more thing I'll mention when it comes to storage is there are some people who have like little, those little, I don't know, dividers that you can put to kind of tell you where certain albums are. Depending if you store them alphabetically, then you can put those there to make it easier to find. So that's another good one. I don't do it because I usually have a good idea where things are without them. And one more thing, one more small tip. It's kind of related to storage, but it also comes down to organization. And that is if you have a lot of CDs or vinyl, it's good to have a little spreadsheet to kind of catalog everything. You can catalog the artist, the name of the album, year it came out, whatever. There's a lot you can put on a spreadsheet. Depends how far you want to take with it. So I kind of tackled two things. I tackled storage, but I also tackled a little bit of organization. But those are going to be also big things for your music collection. And there's one more thing I'll talk about, and this is not really a step per se, but this is more like a reminder for those starting out that remember, this is your collection. Don't let anybody online or in person tell you that you shouldn't buy this, you shouldn't listen to this, your music taste sucks. Why you're doing it the way you are doing it. It all comes down to how you're enjoying it. If you're having fun and you're enjoying the music, that's the number one thing that matters. So don't ever forget about that. But that's pretty much a good overview of how to start a music collection. I know there's certain things I didn't really go too in depth, like how to properly store records or CDs or stuff like that, or how to maintain certain formats. If you want to see a video like that in the future, let me know in the comments and I'll see what I can do there. But again, if you're new to collecting, again, I hope this was a good start. And for the people who are watching who are veterans at collecting, then feel free to drop even more tips in the comment section below. Again, music, there's a community, so let's help each other grow in this field. So that's going to do it for me today. If you enjoyed this type of video, then please give it a like, subscribe to the channel if you are new, and we'll see what we have next time. But thank you again, and I'll see you then. Goodbye for now.